Hey everyone, Ryan Young, KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu. Hope you're doing well. So here we are, first week of 2024, and it's time to get to business, right? And what is get to business? Well, it depends on you. You know, everybody is, they have different meanings for getting to business. So for me, it's to, continue working hard to spread the word of KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu and Hicks and Gracie's Jiu-Jitsu to everyone that I can. And on the YouTube channel to answer your questions. Now, you may want to do KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu, you may not, and that's fine. At the end of the day, Jiu-Jitsu is all about making us better. At least that's the way I see it. You know, my whole job in teaching Jiu-Jitsu is to make you a better person. Achieve more, accomplish what you want to accomplish. Make you better today than you were yesterday, and Jiu-Jitsu is just my tool to do it. So let's go over some couple of questions. I will do this one. It's a good question. Actually, it's from Nikki Ryan 666, and I'm wondering if this is Gordon's brother, Nikki. Anyway, he sent this in response to, I don't know which video it was actually, because I only have a screenshot of the question. At KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu, do you require your students to train in a gi in order to get promoted? I've run into a problem where I've been training for 3 going on 4 years. I don't know if this is Nikki Ryan. And because I've decided to stop training in the gi, my professor hasn't given me my blue belt. I train regularly 2 to 3 times a week and sometimes 4 times a week. I'm at a point where I really want to compete, but ethically and personally, wouldn't be right if I registered in a tournament as a white belt. Not sure if I can register independently and just tell them I'm a different belt. And if I did that, would I be stepping on toes of my academy? Unfortunately, it's the only academy in my area. Was just curious if you have heard of anything like this happening before, which personally, I don't care what color belt I wear. I know my skill level, and I have never given it a second thought until deciding I want to get into competition. Okay, that's a good question. So here we go. I hope the wind is not all that loud. I've got my old windsock here, and I'm covering up my mic, so hopefully we'll be good. If it's bad, it won't make it through editing, and you won't see this video. But okay, so training in competition and ranks. What do we do here? Well, as far as KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu, because that was his question, what do? We require our students to train both in the gi and no gi. Now, when we're training with the gi, we do it from September 1st through May 31st of every year, of the next year. And then June 1st through August 31st, we start in the no-gi season. So we do seasons, 3 months no-gi, 9 months gi. And how did this come about? Well, it's because that's when I first started in Hawaii with Helson, we did no-gi Friday and gi Monday, Wednesday. And then when I took privates at Helson's house, it was always with the gi on. So most of my training, and most of our training in general, is done with the gi on. But as I tell people, really, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and by extension KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu, has 3 parts to it. Part 1 is the self-defense curriculum. And I say that first because with regard to my instructors, self-defense is the reason for doing Jiu-Jitsu. Right? You're not doing it for sport, but you can do Jiu-Jitsu in a sport, right? If you can't always be fighting people, you can't always be doing Gracie challenges. Well, we really don't do them anymore because there's no real benefit to it, because everybody does Jiu-Jitsu now. Everybody, so what are you gonna do now? It's just whose Jiu-Jitsu is better. So it's no longer really a Gracie challenge. Gracie challenge was designed for a fight type thing, Vale Tudo, they called it, anything goes. And you're fighting people who also fight, like to fight, what have you, but they're doing a different martial art. Boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, judo, whatever, right? And we don't do this to fight Jiu-Jitsu people. then you're just comparing who's better at jiu-jitsu. It's not really going style versus style. But I digress. So self-defense is one, and number two would be grappling with the gi on, and part three is grappling no gi. So now there are a lot of schools, academies, whatever you want to call them, that over the years, especially once the advent of the sport jiu-jitsu here in the United States kind of taken hold, which took hold in Brazil, I'd say. Well, they've always been competing in Brazil, but it was a different mindset than what happened eventually. Initially, they would compete in jiu-jitsu occasionally, maybe once, twice, 3 times a year. And you would have the gi on for pretty much the whole year, and then you would take the gi off in preparation for a tournament for like 30 days. You would actually train and compete with the gi on, but with points. And that's what we did. I remember we did that at Hickson School. I competed once for Gracie Torrance against Hickson School, which was kind of awkward because I trained at both places at the same time, which is, I guess, one of the reasons why Hickson and Horian decided to end that, where you can be at 2 schools at once. But 30 days prior, we started going over the points and what you need to do, and and to this day, I'm not really versed in points, right? How many points is this? How many points is that? I really don't know. I don't care either. But I do have students that compete, and I just tell them, just go for the submission. If it goes to a decision, then oh well. But that's how I understood it was done. And when I first started in the US, that's kind of how it was done. We didn't really have any tournaments, except maybe an in-house tournament, or like I said, Gracie Academy versus Hickson's Academy. And I know later on, there's a big famous tournament that happened between the Machado School and the Gracie Academy. I say I understand because I wasn't there. I was at Hickson School by then. And Hickson School permanently. And we would compete without the gi on, but when we didn't have the gi on, it was because we would start punching each other, right? And it'd be more simulating, more of a simulation of an actual fight, right? When we did no gi. So that's why we did no gi. It was just to simulate fighting rather than competing as a sport. The submissions have gotten way more sophisticated of late with the no gi, and with the gi actually, manipulating the gi, or with the no gi with all the intricacies of all the leg work, which has gotten very popular of late. But yeah, it was different back then. So, long answer to Nikki's question, Nikki Rod, or Nikki what? Not Nikki Rod. Nikki Ryan 666. Long answer to his question is that if you're only doing no gi, if your jiu-jitsu instructor is traditional, then you're not doing the whole art. So if you're not doing the whole art, how do you expect to be, quote, belted, right? And I say quote because with no gi, you don't wear belts. Now during the summer, some schools will put the belts on, even though they're doing no gi. And the reason why they put the belts on, I assume, and I say I assume because we don't use our belts during the summer at all, but I assume they do it so that, they might be a really big school. People come in and train and don't know who they're training with, so having a belt on lets people know what the rank is of the person you're training with. That's the only thing I can think of. It just, for us, we just, like I said, we don't wear belts during the summer, and we don't give belt promotions during the summer. But when the gi gets put back on, the belts get put back on, and then that's when promotions start again. So if let's say you were to only train at Combat Jiu-Jitsu during the summer, then we'd never put a belt on, and there would be no belt to award you. So I guess that would be one explanation, that if we're not wearing belts, then there's no promotion, since we don't just give belts. The funniest thing I saw was when Joe Rogan got his black belt from Eddie Bravo, who doesn't train with the gi anymore, from what I understand. He just handed a belt to Joe and said, "Here's your black belt," even though I assume Joe wasn't wearing his belt when he was training. He just trains with shorts and a rash guard, which seems kind of weird, you know, getting a belt for something you never wore a belt for. But anyway, there is a benefit to training with both. And here's what I tell my students. The students go, well, you know, and in fact, some schools I know, they will have both gi and no gi classes at the same time, right? So let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. will be gi classes. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday will be no gi classes. We don't do that. The reason we don't do that is because if we did do that, then our members would do like Nikki Ryan 666 does and chooses what they want to train and only do that. So if you prefer no gi, then you're only going to train no gi. If you prefer gi, then you're only going to train gi. Does that help you? Not really, because in my view, and in Dave Kama's view, Hicks and Gracie's view, it does make sense to do both. And in fact, Hicks and Gracie probably trains 95% of the time with his gi on. Even if you look at his instructional videos, they're all in the gi, or virtually all in the gi. I don't know if I've seen any with him not wearing a gi. And in that way, the gi is not thought of as a tool to use, right? Grab the lapel, wind it around, and use that to choke them. The gi is more just for, part of it is tradition, part of it is just like clothing, clothing you choose to wear. You can use it utility-wise. You can use it to choke somebody with. You can use it to get a grip on somebody. But when we teach, we try to teach to not use the gi, except in the instance of collar chokes. So if I am playing guard and I'm teaching somebody to do an armbar from guard, I don't have them secure the sleeve behind the arm. I usually have them put their hip behind the elbow to secure the elbow, you know, as Hickson and Dave calls, connect. You know, we have our opponents, we try to connect to our opponent so that we don't have to use the grips, right? There's an old saying that we have, it's called hips, not grips. And in many instances, when you would use your grip to secure, you know, your opponent's position, instead find a way to put your hip in there and use your hip to do the work. That way you don't tear up your fingers. You know how I've mentioned many times that, you know, 35 years of training now, I still don't have any arthritis in my fingers, and I don't have ugly jacked up fingers. And a lot of it is because I don't get grips. I don't get gis ripped out of my hands because I'm not holding on to somebody's gi for dear life. Because I try, as a practice, I try to put my hip into the position so that I don't have to use my hands. So now, as far as promotion goes, you know, right? Nikki Ryan 666 asked about promotion because he's been training for 3 or 4 years now, and training relatively consistently and getting better undoubtedly, but not getting a promotion. Well, the reason why he's not getting a promotion, and I'm just speculating here because I don't know his instructor, it's because he's not learning the entire art. He's only choosing to learn one of 3 parts of the art. Well, maybe he is doing self-defense. If he's doing self-defense, great. So he's doing 2 of the 3 components of Jiu-Jitsu. Now, if he's only doing one part, that's fine. Just like how we have people who only do self-defense. They don't do the grappling aspect. They just do the headlock escapes, the throws, the pins, the bear hug escapes, all that stuff. The regular basic Gracie Jiu-Jitsu self-defense curriculum. They're not spending a lot of time learning the intricacies of the ground game. But as far as the self-defense, anything on their feet, very good, very well versed. I know a lot of people that have done that. And truth be told, well, no, I take it back. Because when we started our Premier membership, and our Premier membership involves It involves private sessions for our members, and some of them take the group classes as well. Some people just do the privates. For those people, when it comes to promotions, they can only get a blue bar on the actual white belt. So Gracie University has a version of it. They call it their combatives belt, and it's a white belt with a blue stripe that runs down the entire length of the belt. We put a blue bar on the belt, and when Hickson had told us to implement that program, we asked him, what's the promotion criteria here? He says, really, there is no road to promotion here at all. And I say, what do you mean? He says, well, I said, because they're going to get better at the self-defense stuff. And he says, well, yeah, that's expected. But as far as promotion, there's no promotion because they're not fighting. And when he says they're not fighting, it could mean, live sparring with punches and stuff, or it could mean attending class and getting smashed or smashing people and fighting through the trials and tribulations of somebody in a group class. And that's why group class students can get belted, whereas strictly private students, as in our Premier membership, don't get belted. Now, we do have a combination membership where Premier members also do group classes. Now, that's the ultimate and the optimal way to do it. That's the way Dave Kama learned. That's the way I learned. That's the way most of our black belts learned. There were some sort of private sessions in there worked with their group classes. So if you have to fight, in quotes, quote, fight, unquote, then you are eligible to earn your belt, earn your different color belt, your blue, purple, brown, black belt. But if you don't, and you only do self-defense, meaning 1/3 of of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu curriculum, then you're not eligible to get a belt. So it would make sense that if you only do groundwork with the gi on, then you're not doing no gi, nor are you doing self-defense. So a belt would not necessarily be in your future, a new belt. And likewise, if you do only no gi, no self-defense, no grappling with the gi on, then you're not going to get a belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Different instructors have different criteria for their school. So like we saw, like I mentioned with Joe Rogan, he got, actually from what I understand, 2 black belts. I think he got one from Jean-Jacques Machado, and then went to train under Eddie Bravo, and then got another black belt in the no-gi stuff from Eddie. So yeah, I mean, Eddie Bravo has his own criteria for belts with regard to the no-gi. So yeah, he does it. Now, in answer to the tournament question. Now, the question is, okay, what do I enter myself in at a tournament? My instructor won't give me anything more than the white belt that I'm wearing, but I want to compete, and I've been competing for a number of years. So it doesn't make sense for me to enter as a white belt. Enter as a white belt, and if you're good enough, clean up the division, and then, and then ask what your instructor wants to do. Because if you're a multiple gold winning white belt, and you've entered all the tournaments that have that, then there's going to be a point where it's getting kind of ludicrous. You need to give him a blue belt. Now, I guess if the instructor didn't want to give him a blue belt, he could theoretically enter him as a blue belt, say he's a blue belt, so he can enter, and then let him enter blue belt. But when he comes back to the academy, then just put your white belt on, right? Remember Hidon Gracie, the story about him, how when he was in Brazil for the summers to spend with Helio Gracie when he was a kid, teenager, right? Helio Gracie would enter him in tournaments and would enter him as a black belt, even though he was 16 years old and a purple belt. So he'd enter the tournament and do however he did, and at the end of the match, put the purple belt back on and go walk around the tournament after that. But when it came time for his match, walk up to the mat, put the black belt on, compete, and come off. Some tournaments won't let you do that. And that's for liability purposes. So they won't let you enter as a belt that, that's above you, because what would happen if, say, you're a purple belt, you enter black belt because you think you're good enough, and then you get something broken, right? You get injured. In today's litigious society, that promotion can be liable for knowingly letting a purple belt enter up against black belts. Right now, this purple belt, maybe he or his instructor thought he was phenomenal before he entered him in any tournament. So never did a tournament before, and he's a purple belt, and he kills all their black belts. So the instructor says, well, you're not quite a black belt yet, but you are good enough to compete against black belts. So yeah, if you want to, go ahead and enter the black belt tournament. So he does, and gets not only beat, gets injured. Well, a couple of things. Number one is he might have been accurately belted, meaning he wore the belt that he was supposed to wear, and that he was clearly out of his league in that tournament. That's option one. Option two is that he enters a tournament and does well. Well, then, if you want to compare to other people, you could say, well, maybe you are a black belt, and then goes from purple to black belt, right? Because a lot of schools, a lot of academies will use tournaments as a measuring gauge for their students, right? How many of you have seen where professors will promote their students on the podium, right? We don't do that here at KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu. It's just not our thing. So, but we want people to compete, but not compete for a belt, right? You compete because you want to compete. You compete because you want to test yourself against other people, and in your size, your weight, your age, your belt category, right? So that's why you enter a tournament. You don't enter a tournament for a belt. At least we don't. And we have had members in the past that would enter a tournament and would win, and then say, hey, I'm a world champion, I should get my, let's say in this case, purple belt, right? But as far as the curriculum goes, as far as our criteria, he's not a purple belt, right? But his opponent, in 1 year goes and wins, and his instructor belts him, even though our guy beat him, right? But his instructor gave him the purple belt. Oh well, that's just kind of how it goes. Just because you beat another purple belt from another school doesn't always mean you're a purple belt, right? Because every instructor has their own criteria for what makes a belt. And if one instructor's criteria is just win a tournament at purple belt, that makes you a purple belt, then that's fine. That's his, as we say in Hawaii, that's his kuleana, that's his privilege. But that's not necessarily why we do it. That's like how when I was a kid, I'd want to do something that one of my friends was doing, and I asked my mom, hey mom, can I do that? She's like, no. And I said, well, why not? She says, because I said so. I'm like, okay, well, I get that, but he's doing it, I want to do it too. And my mom would say, I don't care what he's doing, I'm saying no, right? Okay, fine. Well, I'm not equating, grown-ass adults who do jiu-jitsu, who wonder why they train and don't get a belt. And win a tournament. I'm not equating that with with being a kid and your parents telling you can't have anything, right? But Nikki Ryan 666, here's an alternative for you. Since you do no-gi anyway, how about you enter a no-gi tournament? Because a lot of the no-gi tournaments these days, they don't do it by belt rank. They do it by beginner, intermediate, advanced, right? Simple. And I'll give you an example, because I have a student who, at purple belt, wanted to enter the ADCC tournament. Not the trials or anything like that, just the one in Dallas, and then later the one in Arizona, Scottsdale, that we had gone to last year. He wanted to try it out and see how he was. Didn't want to do the intermediate because of the rule set. I think in the rule set you couldn't do reaps, you couldn't do certain type of heel hooks or whatever in the rule set, in the intermediate class, which would have been blue-purple, and he was purple. He went and entered black, or advanced brown-black, and did it that way. Now, you can do that. Here's the thing, though. I think once you enter at a certain level, you can't go back down to your normal level, right? So if you're normally an intermediate, or if you should be an intermediate, and you enter advanced, then I think you're stuck doing advanced going forward. You can't go back to intermediate. But that, I don't know. I don't run a promotion. I don't know all the technicalities of it, but I know there are technicalities. In one particular tournament, I had one student who, at brown belt, wanted to enter the black belt gi tournament, but that promotion wouldn't let him do it. They had two owners. One owner said, yeah, no problem, but didn't communicate it to owner number 2. And at the tournament, owner number 1 wasn't there. He was somewhere else. Owner number 2 said, I didn't know about it, so there's nobody for you, because you're not a black belt. So they asked me, he can enter as black belt, but you're going to have to promote him right now. And no, he's not ready for a promotion. After all, he had just gotten his brown belt the month prior. So he ended up doing a catch weight match with another brown belt, which was good, right? So at least he got to compete. So that took a while to answer, but I wanted to kind of give you an in-depth answer as to why your instructor, what he may have been thinking outside of you just asking him directly, right? I'm just speculating here, right? So number 1 is you only do no gi, which means you don't do the entire curriculum, which then means you are not eligible to get promoted in belt in the art, right? But in aspects of the art, you excel. That's number 1. Number 2 is the liability for tournaments with regard to making sure that they get people as close to the correct level competing against each other as possible. So it limits their potential liability should something go wrong, right? And the last is that maybe your instructor just doesn't feel that you exhibit all the qualities he requires to be a blue belt or a purple belt, right? Even though abilities wise you can beat people, right? And that's one thing people need to understand, that just because you can beat somebody of an advanced belt doesn't necessarily make you that rank, right? There were times when I was just getting started in jiu-jitsu, not just getting started, I was doing it for a while, and I would beat people that were blue belts and I was still a white belt. And the first point I might wonder, like, okay, well, I'm catching blue belts now, still wearing a white belt. But did I really worry about it? Not really. There were no tournaments in Hawaii back then, in the late 80s, early 90s. I think Helson did his first tournament in Hawaii in 93, the year after I moved to California. And tournaments weren't as prolific then as they are now. But, being that they are prolific now, it's basically created a different jiu-jitsu, right? The sport BJJ, right? Someone was talking about an interview that was being done with that grappling phenom. What's his name? Musamechi, right? And he kept saying that for what he does, and he would say sport jiu-jitsu or sport. He would always clarify that what he does is he concentrates on being the best in the sport, right? And I think that's correct, right? If your thing is the sport, right, that would make you pull guard, right? Because his rationale for pulling guard was, I'm going to submit you from my back anyway, so why not just hasten it, right? Just have you come, into my guard and let me work you from there. But in a fight, no, not a good thing, which is why he would clarify, right? In the sport of jiu-jitsu, this is perfectly fine, and you can be the best in the world playing that game. Remember the Meow brothers, right? They pretty much only played guard, right? They might take your back, but really their whole thing, well, even in, you know, playing back, taking your back, they're pretty much on their back, just like with guard and all that. So it's a different game. In fact, it's a game, not a simulation of a fight. So anyway, Nicky Ryan 666, that was an awesome question, and it took a lot of explanation to give you a lot of background, but I would say don't worry about the belt, and you already said you don't worry about the belt, but why don't you go enter the ADCC tournaments, because the classifications are different, right? They don't have belt classifications, they have beginner, intermediate, advanced classifications, and enter as a beginner, see how you do. If you clean up, get a gold medal, enter the next one at intermediate. If you clean up, get a gold medal, enter as advanced. All right, more power to you. Anyway, thanks for your questions. If you have more, feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think of this video. If you made it this far, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, because it helps to make this channel grow, and if this channel grows, then I have more reasons to do more of these videos if they help you, right? It's all based on what the market believes, right? The market doesn't like what I do, they won't like it, they won't subscribe, then I get the hint, all right, don't do any more of these videos. On the other hand, if I get a lot of likes, I get a lot of subs, then I need to do more of them, right? Anyway, that's all I got for you. Take care, happy training, bye now.